So, I've recently been somewhat obsessed with replaying games from my childhood to distract myself from the ever-forward, relentless march of time and the fact that everything around me is different and I am a stranger in a strange land. While going back through these games, I came across something that made me uncomfortable in that same hard-to-explain way that a picture of an empty birthday party room makes you uncomfortable. And this thing is Lego Island.
I'm the pizza delivery dude, the dude with the food. Ollie!
Now watch this!
Be careful, Peppa. Way cool.
Liberty 25, code 6.
Lego Island is, as you can imagine, a Lego-themed game set on the eponymous Lego Island. It was developed by Mindscape and released in 1997. It was the second Lego game ever made, but the first one to be released outside of Japan. The island acts as a proto-open world where the player can explore and mess with some of the things around the island as one of 5 characters. The police officers Nick and Laura Brick, Mama and Papa Briccolini, and then the semi-main character, Pepperoni. Each of these characters is modeled after Howard Gardner's theory of multiple intelligences, which, from my limited research, posits that human intelligence is not a single ability, but comprises various distinct modalities such as linguistic, logical, mathematical, musical, and spatial intelligences. Get out of here. Now, the game itself was pretty well received for an edutainment game and actually required some pretty robust hardware for the time. The game really only happily ran at 200 megahertz with the typical Pentium processor of the time running at about 120 megahertz. So you pretty much had to have the state-of-the-art Pentium 2 processor to run the game smoothly. The game doesn't really have a story to follow and is more of just a do tasks as different characters to get completionist trophies. For the most part, you're kind of just wandering around the island looking at things. You can interact with most things on the island, but they kind of they change color or rebuild into a different shape. So there's not too much to it beyond that. One thing I thought was really cool that I found out about while researching this was that Mindscape actually created Lego Island out of Legos and let kids come in and play with it to find out what specifically the children were interested in so that they could incorporate that into the game itself. Also, just as a note to the Lego company, I would happily pay $800 for a Lego Island Lego set that I could set in the middle of my living room. Now, I could go on and on about the game's development and how it pushed some technical boundaries, or how the day after the release, Mindscape actually fired the entire Lego Island team to avoid having to pay them royalties. But let's talk about the real reason that we're here: Liminality. before I get into this, I do want to say up front that yes, this is an old game, and most of what I'm saying can sort of be broken down to it's an old game and this is all that they could really do at the time. But I think the fun of Liminality comes from embracing the space and playing with the scene. Like, yeah, I can look at all these pictures and just say it's an old room, who cares? But that's not the experience that we're trying to have. Horror movies aren't scary because they're real. They're scary because we let them be. Poltergeist couldn't actually happen, but that doesn't change the fact that I tied my closet door shut with a t-shirt for a couple of years just in case a portal to hell happened to open up in my closet. What I'm trying to say is this concept at its core is a little silly, but just play in the space with me. Liminality, and what it has come to mean to most of us, is hard to define, but I kind of like that. Like the concept itself follows the feeling it conjures, this sort of tug between familiarity and the unknown. One of the quotes that conjure the idea of liminality in the most succinct way for me is the one I started the video with. You can go back, but no one is there. When I look at these images, I feel like I've traveled back into my childhood memories, but the caveat is that I'm the only one that was able to go back. Everyone else that was there is gone, and now these images are empty, putting you in this weird space of, I remember this place fondly, but I'm all alone now. It's like being in your old elementary school, but most of the lights are off, or being in a mall at night and nobody's there.
Or like a panda with a mean face. Or like sandals with pressure points drawn on them. Or the smell of a blackboard eraser. Or a Sunday morning where you wake up and it's raining.
Obviously, I don't think Mindscape set out to make a liminal game. I think the effect comes from the limitations of the software and hardware of the time. That's why so many things from the Windows 98 era evoke these feelings. The spaces are a little off. They're very lonely. There's this strange fog that doesn't let you see very far, which creates this feeling of claustrophobia. I also think a big cause of liminality is lighting. Most of the spaces that invoke these feelings either look like they're being captured with a camera flash in a dark space, or there's an almost complete lack of shadows, giving the sense that the space is artificial. Now, when it comes to Lego Island specifically, I think these feelings come from a few things, and I've put them in, say it with me,
numbered list.
So, number one is the ocean. You look around and all you can see is the ocean. And yes, it's technically an open world game, but the space is so small and so remote that claustrophobia begins to set in pretty quickly. Like, what if you're here forever? How long until you've done everything multiple times and you start to go insane? It's that feeling that the backrooms used to evoke before they got gamified. Like you're a captive in a strange space for an unknown amount of time for unknown reasons. Number two, the people. Obviously, NPCs from this era were limited in scope, but the way that you interact with the characters on Lego Island feels more like this is a playground for you. It evokes this idea of none of this is real, someone just put you in a box with things they thought would entertain you or trick you into thinking it is real. But they did a bad job, and something is off. Everything in the world of Lego Island exists just for you to click so that it will do something funny. There's hardly even a story to follow unless you play as Pepper and happen to do a few specific tasks on the island. Number three is the colors. There's something about the color palette of this game and older games like this that really bother me. I can't quite pin it down, and it may just be the limited color scope of older software that gives it an old feeling, but, well, no, actually, that's probably what it is. The software only had access to so many colors at once, so the nuance of the real-world color palette is lost, bolstering this feeling of imitation, like the space is an approximation of a world built from your memories. Number 4 is the audio. That bit crushed sound that games had at the time gives everything an eerie feeling. That's why Harke's version of Daisy is so creepy to me.
Daisy, Daisy, give me your answer too. I'm half crazy for the love of you.
When paired with the idea of I'm trapped in a weird virtual terrarium, the approximation of the human voice spectrum makes it feel more like imitation, like something is doing its best to recreate what it thinks you want to hear. I think this era of gaming was special because we were almost at a point where we would get games like Morrowind, where the game world feels somewhat alive, but we weren't quite there yet. So we get things like Lego Island, where it's almost an open world, but not quite. The NPCs almost interact with you, but not really. Everything is close to where it needs to be believable, but it hasn't gotten there, so we're stuck in this uncanny valley that we can't leave. It's a horror that can't be recreated because it's born of technical limitations. Games from this era have a very specific vibe that's nearly impossible to recreate purposefully because none of what made them off-putting by today's standards was done on purpose. It's just a byproduct of how they were created and what they were created with. Lego Island isn't a horror game, but when I look at its landscapes and interact with its characters, I can't help but feel like something is off. And I think that twinge of anxiety can do much more to make something eerie than any amount of tense orchestral music or jump scares or close camera shots. Lego Island is a great game, and there were so many moments while I was replaying it where I caught this faint whiff of that childlike sense of wonder that I experienced the first few times I played it nearly 30 years ago. But looking at the game today definitely gives a sense of, why are you back here? You should be moving forward. This is just a memory, and there's nothing left for you here. I think a big part of what makes things liminal and what makes liminality scary for us is that it conjures feelings of nostalgia, which brings to light the fact that we've moved on from all of that stuff that we enjoyed so much. That time in our life is gone, and even the places are empty now, and you can't go back to them. And I think that's what makes liminality and liminal spaces so scary, but in a comforting way.
Are you ready to leave Lego Island? If you select the green brick, you go. If you select the red brick, you stay. Green go, red stay. Thanks for the visit, and you're welcome to come back anytime. We'll miss you.